Hello, everybody. We want to thank you for joining us at the Empowering Pastors, Leaders, and Leaders. Let me see. Empowering Pastors and Leaders. I said it correctly that time. Training. We say it that way. We used to be mainly this whole group began with my own staff in my office one day, and then a young man, a businessman named Josh Fuchsman came in, and he said, "Pastor, can I bring some other friends in?" And all of a sudden, it started to grow, and we went to one location, outgrew that. Then we're in this room, and so I just want to say thank you so much for being here today and being willing to stretch yourself. You know, sadly enough, there are many pastors and many leaders who get no training. Really none. I'm not talking a little. I'm talking zero training. We've gone to Bible college, we've gone to college, business school, and then no training. Most companies now, not some, but most companies are not training anybody. And truthfully, most churches, most pastors are not taking the time to train their leaders. The problem with that is when we don't train our leaders, then there's no way for them to accelerate. And as we went over last week, talking about Moses, was until you stretch your staff, there's no way the Red Sea is going to open. And so there's a need for us to be able to increase, move forward, instead of being constantly at the riverbanks and see God's blessing. But you can't do that until you stretch your staff. But you can't stretch your staff until you do training with your staff. And so I just want to say that if you're here today and you're watching online or you're in the room, I just want to congratulate you. And if you could give yourself a hand clap this morning and say you're proud of yourself, and you should be very proud of yourself, because really you put yourself in a position to grow. You know, some people say to me, well, I've heard this stuff before. Well, I've heard that before. You know what? There's nothing new under the sun. But many times what I've learned is this. If you can take one thing a month, if I say one thing, you can just find, if you take all training, so that's 4 hours of training, and in 4 hours of training, you just take one principle a month, just one. And you change yourself one way a month. In 1 year, you've changed 12 principles in your life. You have listen, if you've changed 12 things in your life in 1 year, you are light years ahead of people. And that means that you're willing to accelerate. That means you're willing to grow and mature. And I don't know, I'm just extremely proud of you being in this room. Now, my staff really doesn't have an option. Bible school doesn't have an option. But everybody else, we just want to say thank you. And for those, I want to say thank you too. I am going to just take a second for the staff and the folks that are in the room. Food just rolled in, and if you would like some, you can just go grab it. There are hamburgers, there are hot dogs, and if you're there, I don't want to just, you know, titillate you in the fact of saying there's food, but if you got food, why don't you go grab it real quick? We're just going to take about 2 minutes and allow everybody just to grab some food. I do need you to grab it quickly and efficiently so that we can start like in a minute and a half. I'm going to give you 1 minute and 30 seconds. 1 minute and 30 seconds. Go, go, go. Next year, for Empowering Pastors, while we're waiting for everybody, next year for Empowering Pastors Conference at the end of March, we have Jim Raley coming, who's a phenomenal man of God out of Ormond Beach, pastors a dynamic church. We are working on, of course, I believe the bishop is going to return. We want the bishop to return. The impartation that he leads and gives is just amazing, especially when it comes to increasing the finances at your church. And then the third, where we are asking if Larry Stocksville will return. He was here with us this last year. And wow, if you missed Empowering Pastors Summit, oh man, you've got it. This is the best. And I'm not even kidding, man. It's a smaller group of people, but it's the best. You need to make sure that you can get here next year at Empowering Pastors Summit. While they're getting food, I also just want to tell you what we do as Empowering Pastors. We also have what's called Empowering Pastors Wives. So my wife and I have this ministry, and what we believe is investing in pastors and investing in pastors' wives so that you can accelerate in the vision that God has given you. You see, I believe that God has given you a vision. It's supernatural, internal, in your heart, and that many of us are just struggling because we're not sure what to do next. You know, Bible school might have trained you how to preach. It might have trained you how to move in the Word of God, but maybe not trained you in business or in structure, or maybe just simply you feel disconnected from everybody in the world and all by yourself. And so I want to encourage you. That's what His Tabernacle does, and that's what Empowering Pastors does. I'd encourage you to go to our website, empoweringpastors.com. And if you would push your wives, because I know that they will be blessed. My wife is just a dynamic woman of God, truly caring and loving. empoweringpastorswives.com. And it's about you being ministered to, you being challenged, you being stretched, you stepping into your purpose and your call. Today, our study is going to be a little bit different. What I want to do with that is I want to cover a topic about, it's called, how do I learn? Everybody learns different. Y'all know that, right? Everybody learns differently. The problem is if we've never thought about how we learn, then we might not have positioned ourselves to get the most out of what we're sitting in. So today I want to cover 3 areas of learning. I want to cover you learning from reading a book or listening to a CD, you learning from being in this kind of environment, and you learning from an individual or a one-on-one type of learning. So I want to cover all 3 areas, and you're going to be a big part of this because I'm going to need your feedback. I want to hear how you learn. I want to hear how you're stimulated and how it works in you. I was and I've been certified with John Maxwell, and I was at his training this year, and Brother Simpson stood up and he said some statistics that were just absolutely startling. And this is what they are. Ready? That 2% of people think. Now, what do we mean by thinking? Thinking isn't just, hi, I'm going to get up and get a hamburger. That's not thinking. I'm talking thinking about your life, thinking about information. I'm talking about strategic planning. I'm talking about real schematic thinking, putting things in order to where you can move forward in your life, really thinking. I don't know how many of you were here for the training we did. Oh, I believe it was over a year ago. But in that training, actually, one of the exercises was that you had to take a 30-minute span of every single day and think. How many remember that? Yeah. And you know, most people don't do that. Let me ask you in the room, and please don't lie, and don't be embarrassed. How many of you actually take 30 minutes a day just to think about the things of your life and the things of ministry? Good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Like specific yep. A specific allotted time. You take 30 minutes, sit down, and that's all you do is think 30 minutes on a specific topic and about what you're doing for the day. Most people don't do that. The problem with not doing that is you have what's called fragmentation. Now, I want to remind you that there is no such thing, no such animal as multitasking. There's no such thing. Every human being can only do one thing well at one time. Now, you can do 2 things at the same time, but you're not going to do either of them well. It's not possible. They actually did studies back in the 1970s. It's not possible. Everyone says, well, I'm more like a computer pastor, you know, I'm a multitasker. Even computers do not multitask. In fact, that's where the terminology came from, was from computers, because people think that the computer is doing all these tasks at the same time, and that's just not true. Even computers only do one thing at a time. They just do it so fast that you don't recognize it. So there is no such thing as multitasking. What they've done in the studies is this, is that if you and I as humans do 2 things, we can do 2 things not great. But the moment you add a 3rd thing, that you drop back down, you have to drop back down to 1. It's amazing to realize that most people think that they can do multiple things at the same time. So when you're asked to think, like take a topic and think about it, if you say you're doing it just walking around throughout the day, it's not possible. You're really not contemplating. Now, my greatest thinking time, I am the freshest in the morning. Now, not everybody is. I remember back when I was in Bible school, I was more of a night hawk. So my freshest time was at midnight. I would be alone, everything be quiet. I'd be in the prayer room or in my dormitory. My roommate be sleeping, and I'd have that time to think and be quiet. But right now, in my time of history, My greatest quiet time is when I wake up. So I'll wake up many times and I'll just lay there and I'll just talk to the Holy Spirit. God, what do you want me to think about right now? And I'll get a topic in my head and I'll just start conversing with him, thinking with him, because God knows all things. Amen. So the moment you start conversing with God, I'm not even talking like sitting down and praying. I'm talking like I'm just thinking with God. And what's amazing is the ideas that just come forward, the thoughts that you couldn't have thought of yourself, or the directions that you hadn't even contemplated, he starts to put in order. But if you never take time to think, and again, that's why only 2%, now think about that, only 2%. So that means only 2 out of 10 people think. Here, the next one is funny. Only 3% of people think they think.
2 out of 100.
2 out of 100. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. 2 out of 100. Not out of 10. What's that?
This can't be for women.
This can't be for women. A woman said this can't be for women. Only 3% think they think. Here we go. 95% would rather die than think. You want to know what is true? Really clearly true? Most people would rather be told what to do than think it through. You know how we know that's true? Because everyone seeks out advice before they sit down and think something through themselves. We want to know what somebody else's thoughts would be on a topic or a situation. We want someone else to share their opinions. What do you think? No, what do you think? That's the whole point. People don't really, and in today's society, thinking is not a normal process. So the issue is that if we're not thinking, that means we're not using our brain energy properly. That also means that we're not stretching our brain, enhancing our brain. And also that means the ability, the capacity of knowledge, but not only knowledge, the ability to use the knowledge, because what is wisdom? Wisdom is the ability to use knowledge correctly. So there's a need to get back to thinking again. Turn to someone and say, you got to be a thinker. So I want to talk about this. What does thinking have to do with learning? Build me a bridge. Someone build me a bridge. Thinking and learning. Yes.
You have to think about what the information that you've been presented with in order to fully comprehend it, and then you've learned it.
Exactly. When you get information like you're getting right now, if you don't contemplate, think on this, then guess what happens to that information? It's gone. It really doesn't. It doesn't stay. Remember we talked about thought trees? I did that message on the ability to think and the thinking through. And what happens is you actually create what's called a thought tree. And this is how your brain works. When you think positively, what ends up happening is you literally create a thought tree. It is a branch that physiologically grows in your brain. It looks like a tree. I have a photograph of it. And what happens is when you continue to contemplate that information, it literally is then seared after 24 hours into that thought tree. That means it becomes part of you. So physiologically, literally your thoughts become part of who you are. So a person that doesn't think, it doesn't matter how much information you have. It doesn't matter what you have learned in the aspect of the dissemination of information into your brain. Until there's contemplation or thinking about it, then you're never making it part of the fabric of your life. And this is where we are at large, not only with the aspect of basic leadership, but also with the principle of let's just talk Bible. Let's just talk Jesus. Let's just talk life. Many people, they are the walking stupid. And I don't mean to be demeaning, but they're the walking stupid. What do I mean by that? They have had information, but never contemplated, never thought about the information. Therefore, it did not become part of the fabric of their lifestyle. Therefore, they had what it took to become successful, and allowed it not to become part of their life. So thinking is very important. And that's why you should take 30 minutes a day. How long?
30 minutes.
30 minutes a day. You must schedule it in a schedule. 30 minutes a day and just sit down and think. When you don't do that, your creativity is stumped. When you don't do that, you don't hear well from God anyways, because if you're not going to be willing to do that in your daytime, you're probably not doing that in your prayer time.
Oh my.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything on that one. That was a little scary. So there's a need to take that time to think. But I want to talk about how you learn. So let me ask you a question real quickly. If I asked you to read a book, and I say, I'd like you to have this book. I want you to study this book. How do you learn when you read a book? How do you get the information from the pages that you're reading with your eyes and get it into your thought processes to where it starts becoming a normal part of your fabric? What works for you? You have to hear it.
I take notes on it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have to write it.
Notes,
I read really slowly.
That's me.
highlights.
It's not, I have to like rewrite my.
Listen, I'm having a word. I need somebody's help with the word highlights, simply because there's a Christian magazine called Highlights with the ITES. Is it highlights or highlights? IGHT? Okay. I've been in church a long time, haven't you? I'm not talking hair either. Thank you. What else?
How about practicing what you read?
Ooh. Did you hear the crowd? Ooh.
Usually I like talking about a topic that I pulled from the book
Yeah.
Yeah.
so that I can actually talking it out.
Reading it out.
Reading out loud.
Comparing it with other similar information.
Comparing. So more like a studying.
Yeah.
Okay, come on, somebody else.
Background music.
Really?
Yeah.
Instrumentals
help me think.
Grace, I agree.
Do you realize, Grace? Most people don't realize this, but when you listen to instrumental and when you listen to opera music, it's all methodical. It's math. So it brings order to an environment. Most people don't even realize that. Somebody else. How do you learn when you read a book?
I have to read it multiple times.
Read multiple times? How many times?
Like 8. It takes me forever to read.
Okay, somebody else? Everybody's so different. Let me tell you how I do it. I listen to a book about 3 times. And then I read it once. Then I highlight it all. Everything that jumps at me.
So 8 times.
And then, watch, and then I go back and reread highlights.
Yeah.
And you know what I find still after that? Is that I still don't remember a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
So if you were given a book today, and you were asked to read a leadership book, what process would you take? Now, this is what I want to get to. Not just how you read a book, because we all read books differently. But I want to take it from reading a book to learning the book. What do you have to do personally to take it from the words on the page that is now being deposited in your mind, that now you want to advance it? So what's happening is you're reading, depositing. How do you learn? book? How do you do it? How do you learn? That's really quiet right there.
So you gotta come up with some kind of plan.
You do. You have to have a plan. And this is why I'm covering this today. Because honestly, many people read books. Now, listen, I read at least 100 books a year. Written plan. Absolutely. It has to be written. Because why? Well, because it's easy to get away from your plan. Yes.
And I think in addition to the written plan is a plan of accountability plan. Because oftentimes we like to put together a plan that looks really great on paper, and we like tell other people that it's great, but the minute that the accountability comes into play, we now begin to back away because that accountability makes it real. People don't like to be told that, hey, you made this plan, I'm going to hold your feet to that. Not anybody in particular. I'm just
Now, I do want to be a little confrontational. I hope you don't mind. And that is, a lot of people are never going to get here because they're not reading any books. Sayla.
What if you watch documentaries?
No.
I learned so much from those.
Yes. You must be reading books. All right, here we go. How many of you are reading? Listen, how many of you are reading a leadership book beside the Bible? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What book are you reading?
Surprised by the Spirit by Jack Deere.
Surprised by the Spirit by Jack Deere. It's a leadership book?
A little bit.
So I didn't think so. Somebody else.
No Limits by John Maxwell.
No Limits by John Maxwell. Instincts.
I forgot the author.
TD Jakes.
No, it's
Good.
The Laws of Teamwork by Maxwell.
Laws of Teamwork by Maxwell. Yes.
Spirit-driven success.
Spirit-driven success. Or as Grace would say, spirit-driven success. She's getting married this Saturday. It's very exciting. Who else is reading a leadership book? Well, I don't have time to read a leadership book. You know, I really don't like to read. I have something to speak to you about, and that is you are never going to truly fulfill your capabilities without learning how to read. You must read. Turn to someone and say, you must read. It's not an option. You must read. Now, listen, I actually, in my learning process, when I do it, like I said, I listen to the book 3 times. Now, I've listened to some books up to 8 times. But then when I go back, I read, literally, physically read the book. And it would amaze you, maybe it's just my brain, how many statements are in that book that I'm now reading after listening 3 times that I never heard. Then I go back after while I'm reading, I'm highlighting, and then I go back and read my highlights. Why am I reading my highlights? Because for me, that's the high points that I believe were the most important or pertinent to my situation at that period of time. Still, by ingesting it, now watch now, I've ingested it at least 4 times. I still don't remember a lot of it. We remember small portions. So there's a need for it. If you're not reading, can you imagine if I'm reading a book, listening to a book, reading a book, getting it into me 4 times, and I still don't remember a lot of the book? What about the people that are not reading? Well, number 1, you've got no new information. Number 2, Everybody wants to move forward, but how can you move forward if you don't have the ability because you haven't fed yourself new knowledge to be able to go to another place? You must be learning. Learning is not an option. Learning is not something that we just choose to do. You know, the fact is, it's a must if you're going to be a great leader. You have to be a learner. You have to be somebody that's always reading. You must always be reading. I'm reading at least 4 books right now. And I said this, I believe, 2 weeks ago. But when I was I'm being coached by Frank Damasio said, "You are a great trainer of leaders, Pastor, but you are not a great trainer of church growers." And so I've already got 4 books under my belt on church growth. I've already gone through some of them 2 or 3 times. Brittany just delivered another one this morning. Just walked it into my office and handed it to me. I ordered it this last week. Why? Because I have got to know. Why? Because we don't have the luxury of staying a medium-sized church. Do you remember the numbers from last week? 70%? They go back. I choose not to go backwards. I choose not to stay, we're at 750, the top of a middle-sized church on a Sunday morning. I refuse to go down to 300. So that gives me only one option. I have to become and step into 1,000. I have to step into 2,000. I have to step into the next realms of growth. Well, how am I going to do that if I don't know how to do that? How am I going to do that if I'm not putting new information in my mind, in my thought processes to be able to make decisions? You see, it's almost like a student that is getting ready to go take an exam. And so what they do is they go get ready to take the exam. They've done no study, but this is what they say: "Holy Spirit, please give me help." Has anybody ever done that before? No one want to confess? All right, that's good. Thank you. There's no study, but then you ask the Holy Ghost to help you. I'm sorry. There's nothing for him to pull from. You've got to have something in the well or you get no water. You can lower the bucket all you want, but if the well is dry, you do not get your thirst quenched. It's not possible. You will remain parched. And what's that? You got to raise the staff. Boom. And then all of a sudden the water goes up. It's power. Listen, if you're, there's only 4 that raise their hand and reading a book. So that means the majority of us in this room are not stimulating ourselves with new information. So what that actually is telling every one of us who didn't raise our hand is saying, well, I really don't want to move forward. I'm okay where I'm at. You never stay where you're at. If you're not accelerating, you're decelerating. It's just not possible. If you remain on cruise control, what happens when you're at cruise control at 72 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour, and all of a sudden, you're just on cruise control, and you're starting to go through a school zone at 15.
Oh, yeah, you get pulled over.
Oh, yeah, you're going to get pulled over. How much is the ticket going to be? Oh, it's double. So now, how do you know that? How do you know how much the ticket's going to be and everything? Dear Lord, have you already got busted in there? Okay, let's move on. All right. I was young. But this is what I'm talking. She's only 23. Those who are online, she's only 23. She said she was young. The issue is that if you remain on cruise control, you're going to crash at some point in time. Because life changes, life moves, life resituates itself. And that's why if you have no knowledge in the well, when you need knowledge to be able to go to a next level or deal with a situation that you're looking at that you've never faced before, well, you're going to do one of 2 things. You're either going to draw from the information that you have inside, or you're going to have to not think and go ask somebody else's opinion. Now, there's nothing wrong in the counsel of many. There's wisdom. But the point comes down to at some point, you must access what you have as treasure already in your heart and your mind. You have to come to a higher level of awareness in your life. Every one of us. This is a constant flow. Except for those who don't care where they're at. I don't know, maybe I'm just strange. I just refuse to remain where I'm at. I just refuse to remain at the position I'm in. I refuse to be satisfied with the information and the knowledge that I have in my brain. I want more. God made me with capacity, didn't he? Someone look up real quickly on the internet how much the average person uses the brain that they have in the aspect of percentages. Does anybody know right off the top of their head? 10%. So if the 10% are probably pretty smart folk. So we have 90% of our physical brain that we're not using. Who gave us that brain? Who gave us the brain? Who gave us the ability to think? Who gave us the capacity? Now remember, this is all about capacity. If you only have 10%, if that's your full capacity, well then you've reached 100%. But if you have 100% and you're only using 10% of your capacity, why are we only using the smallest amount? Can you get to 11%? Can you get to 12%? Can you grow higher in your capacity? Well, of course you can. Why would God give you something that you couldn't increase? And God by nature is increase. God by personality is constantly moving forward. Time never stops. It only moves. Only twice in the Bible did it stop. Other than that, everything is always moving. So when we're not moving forward with our knowledge and learning, then the question is, what are we doing? Well, you're not standing still. Yes.
So in one of my goal books, they said that the mind has the capacity of a supercomputer the size of Texas.
So the mind has the capacity of a supercomputer in Texas.
The size of it.
The size of Texas.
That's
pretty significant. So why are we not reading books? All we're doing, we're not reading, is we've now slowed down our capacity. I am smarter today than I was 10 years ago. I am much smarter today than I was 5 years ago. I am far smarter today than I was when we started this training 4.5 years ago. I'm a different person. My staff will say yay. And not because I would fire them if they didn't. But my staff would tell you, if you ask them, is Pastor different than he was 4.5 years ago? And the answer is absolutely yes. I'm a totally different person. I lead differently. I lead differently than I did 2 years ago. Why do I lead differently? Well, because you're getting older. No. Well, that helps too. But the truth is, honestly, I've just eaten so much leadership books that I've had to look at who I am and change me. You can't change you if you're not learning. So some of you learn by hearing. Who said they learn more by hearing? That's me. I'm a hearer. Just two. What do you do to take it from the hearing ear into actually learning?
Depends what it is. Usually I'll have a discussion with whoever, usually my wife, even if though 90% of the time she doesn't want to hear it. And then I'll try to find a way to see if I could teach it to someone.
Okay. So you learn it and then teach it.
I try.
You listen to it. So how much of the capacity do you remember when you hear it?
When I hear it, maybe 5%.
Okay. Not much?
Not much.
Okay. Who does the notes? Who writes notes on the book? You write notes on your books? Do you write notes in your books? Do you have a separate notebook for the book, notebook of the notebook? Notes of the book, of the notes? Both. Yeah, both.
Oh, yeah.
How much do you remember?
I just try to find one big thing and stick that. Just
One big thing?
That's my goal in every book.
One big thing in every book. Who does the highlights? Who does practice what you read? How many talk it out? Most of you talk it out. How do you talk it out? To yourself? Oh, that's interesting. My dad says you can talk to yourself as long as you get the right answers. Anybody else? You talk it out. Who do you talk it out with?
My husband.
Your husband? Does your husband listen or challenge you when you talk?
Oh, he challenges me on everything.
He challenges you? Pastor Chad, you said you talk it out?
Yes.
You talk it out with whom? With your wife?
Yeah.
Does she challenge you on your thoughts? Somebody else? Yeah, you kind of, I don't know what kind of means.
Like, if it's like something really big that like wowed me, like I'll talk about with like my friends.
Okay, you talk with your friends? Okay, very good. How about reading it aloud? Who reads out loud? Very good. Portia, you read it out. Your sisters. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? You do know that you're trained how to learn. And that's why kids that are in high school struggle when they go to college. In elementary school, they usually do memorization because as your brain is younger, your memorization skills are much higher. But then they go to what type of learning in college? You're self-taught. What's that?
It becomes qualitative rather than quantitative.
Qualitative rather than quantitative. Okay, what does that mean, Pastor Obi?
So quantitative is that like 2 + 2 = 4.
Oh, I need you to be a little bit louder. I'm sorry.
Quantitative is 2 + 2 = 4. Qualitative says there is more than one answer. Which one is better for this and why?
Very
and you have
good.
to be able to defend it to everybody else. While everybody else is trying to tell you why they're right and tear you down.
That's all right.
It is. It's good. We learn different, right? So this is why if you're never reading a book, how many of you read when you were younger, but you don't read today? 1, 2, 3. How many of you didn't read when you were younger?
The thing that trips me up about reading is I'm a very visual person.
Okay.
So when like I can hear it and that helps, but if you're not showing me something physically in my face, I'm completely lost.
So that's how you learn.
Yeah, but books don't do that. That's why I watch documentaries. 'Cause I can see it.
Could it be possible, and this is just a thought process, could it be possible about the age
Maybe.
and how you were trained in your schooling? Possible? You're more mature.
Oh. I mean, I was in dance classes and art classes and stuff, so I've been learning how to visually do stuff my whole life.
Could it be because of the type of maybe the artsy people? And could that be? So how many of you draw when you read? While you're reading a book, you might be drawing something as well.
I doodle when I listen.
You doodle?
Sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, we'll get into that in a little bit. Isn't it interesting though? Listen, there are no perfect answers today. There's no conclusive answers today. But what I'm trying to do today with us is I'm trying to say, listen, if you are never adding new information, then you're not learning. And if you're not reading, you're not learning. If you're not learning, then you are going to be the same person in 5 years that you are today. We must learn. What are you doing to learn? If it's got to read, listen, if you got to hear the book, whatever, get it in you. You've got to be able to add new information. What happens to a pond that gets no new water? It becomes what? Stagnant. What happens to stagnant water? Swampy. What's that? Death. Why is there death in that type of water? There's no movement. There's no outlet and there's no inlet. It becomes nothing more than stagnant, dead water that after a while, even the frogs don't want to live there. How many of you ever smelled stagnant water? How many of you ever walked by and you went, whoa, that's nasty? How many of you, that's your brain? If you're adding no new information, you are stagnant. There is no way for you to give out anything but stagnant water. There's no way for you to breed new animals. There's no way a fish is going to live in there. So without reading books, without taking it from the book to learning, by generating a plan that you write down, this is how I'm going to read this book, this is how I'm going to get the information, and then having somebody you're accountable to say, I read that book, then honestly what's going to happen is this, is your mind is going to get soft, dull, not challenged, not stimulated. And therefore, you will be the same individual. So even if you don't like to read, should you read? That was really weak. I said, even if you don't like to read, should you read?
Yes.
The Bible school students say, oh, I got to read all the time. I got to read the whole New Testament. I got to read this one. I got to read that one. They're doing everything for you to make you successful. The more gates you get the information in, the more you retain it. So there's a need to make sure that you're reading books. The next one is, I want to know how you learn in a classroom setting. So this would be considered like a classroom setting. Now, for those who have been, here and you're, the staff and so on and so forth, you're required to be here. The question is not that you're required to be here. The question is how much of this information that really is really good stuff are you actually learning? Just because you're in a classroom doesn't mean you're learning.
That's right.
Now I'll give you an example. I had a Bible college professor who was teaching us the book of Revelation. And he believed, and his opening statement was, the Great Tribulation period is not 7 years long, it's 10.5 years long. So from that day forward, we brought in our hard case briefcases into the class. When he began to teach, we opened them, flipped them up, and took a nap. We didn't listen to him anymore. Was I in the classroom?
Yeah.
Did I learn?
No.
Absolutely not. I was in another classroom, and the only reason I learned is because I was an irritant to the professor. It was not even possibly. It was definitely, absolutely. It was on typology. And she said, we are a type of the moon. And she used a verse in the book of which book was that? Was it? Anyway, she used a book. And I'm reading it, that verse, and it had nothing to do with us being a type of the moon. It had to do with the moon. And she decided to make some typology sermons out of it. And so here I was, after that class, though, after I challenged her in that class, I really didn't listen. So my question is, how many of you come to this class and you don't listen at all? How do you learn in a classroom setting? What do you have to do to take the information that's being released here to you, to where it actually becomes part of the fabric of your learning system? What do you do? Good. Take notes? and review. Are you doing that right now? Well, go on. She's doing it right now, so it's not just saying it. Very good. Somebody else.
When you show examples,
Examples?
visuals, or explain out a example of how a scenario would be played out.
Okay. What if I don't do that?
But sometimes I leave and I'm like, okay, I don't know. I don't understand.
Okay, I don't know. I don't understand. Fair? Fair. There's no right answer, wrong answer. Somebody else, you're in this classroom right now. How are you taking away this information? Yes.
Sometimes I feel my mind zoning out or thinking about something else that in my head I'll be like, shut up and listen.
It speaks to herself.
You just gotta tell yourself.
If there's like too many if there's too many people, or I guess if the lesson's like on feelings or something, it's very hard for me to not combat everything in my head that you're saying, because if it's not like a cold hard fact that I can't argue with, then I'll argue it in my head
Okay.
until I leave.
Okay.
So facts help me, I guess.
Okay. Now I want you to realize that these here are what I'm asking for. I'm asking how you learn in this class.
Visual.
Yeah, it's got to be.
No, I'm not giving you visual.
How about,
Writing on the board is a visual.
I don't know if this is the answer, but for me, I'm thinking, one is I have to be interested, and two is I have to do the work after.
Yeah, I have to be
Yeah.
interested. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's the issue with books. Some leadership books are so boring that I can't.
And
It's
they
so
use a
hard.
million big words like, let's just keep it simple.
Yeah.
Just keep it simple. Yeah.
You were talking about if you take one thing per month. What I like to do is I actually keep all my notes in a certain drawer. And I'll
So
go
you
back.
take notes in this class?
Usually I just wait till you hand them out. And then-
Oh!
But no, I take the notes and I'll go back and rewatch. I'll like reread them, but I'll pick one that I think that either is most relevant to me specifically, or one thing that I'm weakest at, and try and build that.
Okay. Great. Come on. I'm not writing on the board this week, but I'm teaching this week. It's good information this week. How are you taking that information and making it part of the fabric of your learning system? Yes.
I think everybody's wired differently.
Yeah.
With that, what I have found to work better for me is that I take something that I know I work well in or where I'm wired, and I find something in that area that actually can help, increase it or develop it more. And I gear in and I focus in on that. So I think even if the topic may not be all interested, I find something and I'm like, okay, I can actually apply this to this area of my life to make it stronger, to make it more developed, make it, better. So I think, again, I just apply, because I can read books. Some are boring, some are enticing, and it really just comes down to interest. But if I can find something within that draws my interest to it, or at least gives me focus to actually work on something in my life, that's how I actually learn.
That's how you do it. Okay. Somebody else on classroom.
Participation helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does. You're not just sitting here like.
Very good. Come on, somebody else. How do you learn personally? Yes.
I have to be doing something. So like while I'm taking notes, I'll probably be playing like a half mindless game on my phone, even though I'm paying attention. I just can't stare at the person talking, because then I get bored. Then I start thinking about other things and how bored I am.
No, that's real. It's good. Good. Somebody else. How do you learn in a classroom participation like this? How do you learn? What do you have to do? How do you do it to where you take the information that I've talked about today and you actually apply it to your life? How do you do it? Yes.
So I'm taking lots of notes, and I'll actually write in my notes questions for myself. So I actually ask myself, is my brain stagnant? And I need to go back and reflect on that. And then I already put together a schedule of what I need to do differently each day to apply it.
Wow.
So I'm doing that while I'm listening to you.
Okay.
Even if it is only just writing words on the board, if I break it down in different colors in my own notes, that sometimes helps me if nothing else.
Colors?
Yes.
What if you are not taking notes?
If I'm not, don't look at me not taking notes.
Right. So I'm in a classroom right now, and so today's a throwaway day.
I could take a picture of that.
Oh, but would you? Probably not. So, but watch. But today would be, and I'm not being nasty. I'm just being real, because this is what I want to talk about. Is because we are in this situation every Tuesday, and you have opportunity to read books throughout the week. If you're in this class and you're here for an hour and nothing is taken out, then it's a wasted hour.
Yeah.
So the question is, what does it take for you to learn in a classroom setting to where you're not wasting an hour of your life? Now, listen, you need to know what this means to me, because for me, this is not just an hour of my life. This is hours of my life, because it takes hours to put together the concepts, ideas, and study to be able to give the information. So it's not just the person that's learning, it's the person that's giving the information, where we all want to walk away as a win-win. So what do you do to learn in this type of classroom setting? Yes.
I think one thing that would be good to talk about is,
A little bit louder,
I
please.
think one thing that would be good to talk about is, which I've heard, is that if I don't like the topic, I just tune out.
Right.
But unfortunately, the topics that you may not like that are still imperative.
Great.
So we may need to talk about that, about how do you focus on a topic that you absolutely hate.
Okay.
Like we all have that thing that's like, I don't want to hear this, but I know I need it.
Let's talk about it. How do we do it? How do I focus on a topic that I don't like, that I need?
So if you want to focus on a topic that you need to make yourself better, that can be the motivator. Like, I'm not good at whatever it is. They say, okay, so the only way I can go to the new level is I have to get good at that. So that can just simply be the driving force.
Yep.
Like keeping what your like master end goal is. Like, I hate accounting, but I have to do it to know that there's X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
Right? But because you can't just ignore something that you don't like and then think that that's going to be okay for your overall plan.
Okay. So this is more discipline.
Or maybe like just being able to talk about it, like I remember in school sometimes we broke up and just like into little groups and we're able to talk about it with other people. And sometimes that helps, just hearing other people's thoughts and perspectives on it if I don't like the topic.
Okay. All of this is very important, because we're all talking about, what's this? Learning. What does learning do for you? It grows you. With no learning, what happens to you? You don't learn. You don't grow. You get stagnant. You become and remain the same person. So the question is, this is not a small topic. This is, this is an easy topic to talk about. We can stand up here and chat about this. There are really no right answers, because we all learn differently. But the reason for doing this today is not giving you an answer, but making you ask yourself the real question. What do I have to do when I read to learn the information that's being placed in my head? What do I have to do to log it into my mind, my memory, that even though I might not need it today, if I need it in 5 years, I've already laid a foundational block for it? What do I need to do in a classroom setting where he talks for an entire hour, a whole hour, and it's on a topic that I'm not even interested in? I might not need it now, but if I don't have it in me in 4 years, I've got to go learn it somewhere. I don't like reading books, so now where am I going to learn it? You got to ask yourself these questions, because this is the reality of somebody who remains who they always are, and somebody who becomes a leader that people want to be like. People are always looking for someone to be like. It's not that you sacrifice who you are as an individual, but the individuals, those divine connections that are in your life that you become like, and you take on some aspect of it, whether it be their smile, whether it be their laugh, whether it be their knowledge, whether it be some aspect of their life. That is what accelerates you to become the person that you will be. I preach the way I preach because of Jimmy Swaggart. Every Sunday morning I watch Jimmy Swaggart at 7 a.m. That's how I learned how to preach. Then I watched Brother Ted Shuttlesworth in Bible college. I watched how he preached. I watched the results, and I started looking at certain things, and I said, you know, I like how he presents it this way. I like what he does this way. And then I've looked at other preachers throughout the years. I look at Bishop and how he just gives a nugget that all of a sudden now you're laying on the ground going like this. And I said, I got to have that as part of my leadership, as part of my presentation of the gospel. So whether you like it or not, I'm part of your life. So the question is when you're not putting in any new information, when you're not reading, Marshall Goldsmith has never met me. Never met me. I've talked a few times on email. He sent me his books, all signed, which was phenomenal. He's never met me. But whether I like it or not, because I've read so many of his books, read them multiple times, he's part of my life. I lead today in a certain dimension because of the impartation of knowledge that I received when I listened. Can't tell you how many times I listened to what got you here won't get you there. I can't tell you how many times I've taught it. I've taught it at least 4 or 5 times. I have the PDF on in my photos today of the 10 of the 20 things that as a leader you've got to change. I've never met the man. I've never personally been in the presence of Samuel Chand, but I've read his books. I've sat in a classroom right online. And because I choose to be a learner, I am no longer the same person. You've got to choose to learn. And we don't learn in just one type of environment. And some types of environment produce a greater level of learning, but yet every environment can place yourself in a position where you can learn as much as you want because God has given us capacity, yet we choose not to learn because we want it done our way. So what we have to do is actually change at times the way we do what we think we got to do to get the information that we want. Now, I don't know if anybody even noticed. Probably not. So I'll point it out to you. Mackenzie said she learns by colors, right? I changed colors twice. Been writing in purple. After she said that, I picked up pink. And then I made sure I picked up the orange. Didn't have to do that. Could have stayed with purple. But she learns this way. So I put it into the fabric of my board. You've got to we all have to make decisions on, do we really want to learn or not? We can blame, listen now. We can blame professors for being monotone. They put me to sleep. No, you chose to go to sleep. Well, I don't like the way they teach. Whether you like the way they teach or not, you can learn something. I don't like to read. Then you've chosen not to grow. And see, this is where each one of us make our conscious decisions on who we're going to be in the future. Don't blame God. Don't blame the Holy Ghost. Don't blame the teacher. we all have chosen either to be pupils and students, or we've chosen to remain ignorant. Now, there's another type of learning, and it's called individual or face-to-face. When you're in this environment, how do you learn? Who learns better face-to-face? Individual, one-on-ones. Who doesn't? Okay. How do you personally, when you're sitting down one-on-one, how do you learn best? Yes.
Stories. Stories make things just absolutely stick in my head. If you can put it in a story form, I will remember it until I die.
Okay. Stories, yes.
Asking questions.
Asking questions.
I'm being taught something and like
Hands-on. It's really funny. My wife, she'll say, how do I do this on the computer? My way of teaching is to walk over and do it once for her so she can see it. She doesn't learn that way. Don't touch the computer. Just tell me how to do it. She doesn't ask me anymore. How else do you learn individual face-to-face?
I like being asked questions about the topic to make me think about what we're learning.
Okay. Being asked questions. Very good. Somebody else. How do you learn personally? Yes.
I like repeating things to make sure that I got the right information. What?
Okay. Somebody else. Saw someone look at their watch. It's 1:01. I'll be done in 3 minutes. Somebody else.
Challenge what they say.
Challenge what they say. That's how you learn.
Not to be like act like they don't know what they're talking about, but I find that if they can explain why they're saying what they're saying or why they know what they know, it helps me understand it better. Also, I know if they actually know what they're talking about when they say it.
You're qualifying them. Somebody else. How do you learn on a face-to-face? What's amazing for me is if I'm on a face-to-face, I very rarely see their eyes. Because I'm writing notes like a madman. Because for me, you can look at me face-to-face and tell a story. And I'll many times, like Pastor Cody, I'll absorb a story. But most of the time, I'll miss nuggets. So when somebody else is preaching at the church, so that would be number 2 style of learning. You'll find me up there. Very rarely do I even, I'll very rarely look at the speaker. I have my pen with my iPad and I'm writing like a madman. I'm highlighting and you'll hear me every once in a while go, amen. Other than that, you won't see my eyeballs because I learn because I keep going back over these notes. That's how I learn. And if you're going to sit with me personally face to face and I'm learning from you, I'm probably not going to see your eyes. Not because I don't think you have pretty eyes, but because honestly, I got to remember what you're telling me because this is a moment that I don't want to forget. So I'm writing notes. That's me. Somebody else.
Also concepts, like stories or concepts and structures.
Okay. Great. I don't want to belabor. My point is basic. And it really is a basic topic. But sadly enough, very few people do it. How do you learn? Because if you don't know how you learn, then there's no way for you to learn. It's just going to happen on accident every once in a while. You've got to make a decision to be a learner. You've got to make a decision to say, this is how I know I best absorb the information. So therefore, I'm going to position myself to be able to glean as much of the harvest of the words that are being spoken in my life so that I'm not wasting a moment, a minute, a second of my time. And if I walk away with one concept, if I walk away with one nugget, if I walk away with one principle that I can actually take and apply through the learning process, then I have walked away a rich person. But if I spend an hour and I walk away with nothing, then I've wasted a lot of time. So who do you desire to be in 5 years? Who do you want to be in 5 years? You know, I can tell you that that Ken Clark is a different person today than he was 5 years ago. He is a very successful businessman. He's not just a businessman, he's a very successful businessman. But I remember talking with him 5 or 6 years ago. And he's a different man. When you talk to him, he's a different person when you talk to him now. His concepts are different. His ideals are thinking. I think one of the greatest launching pads that he had was when he went down to that training center. Is it Tennessee or Kentucky? In Tennessee. When you came back from that, you were a different person. How he looked at running the business, how he looked at and saw how to motivate his employees, how he dealt with situations, scenarios. He became a different man because he chose to go learn. What was that word I said? He chose to go learn. So the whole purpose for today, let's whittle it down to one basic thing. If you don't know how you learn, then you can't choose to be a learner, which means you never change. You can never be a great leader if you're never going to change. So what do you have to do to change? When you figure that out, people are going to always be mesmerized because they'll never see you stagnant. You'll never stink with old knowledge. You'll always be a well that people will want to draw from. And they'll want to be around you. Questions, thoughts, contemplations? Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate all of you that are watching online. How do you learn? And so, actually, I'll give homework. I haven't given homework in a long time. Here's your homework. Ready? I want you to take those 3 topics, those 3 locations, 3 ways to learn. Books. What was the second one?
Books, classroom.
Book, classroom, and individual. And I want you to write out to me how you learn. Send it to me via email at drspencer@empoweringpastors.com. Do want to remind you, even Bible school students, if you do not do this homework, I do not get it next week, you owe me $25. I even speak to my own sons and daughters-in-laws. You don't get it, I've taken money from them too, and I don't mind, because I will enjoy your money. Next week, I believe Pastor Lon Williams will be the speaker. How many of you enjoyed him last time he spoke? He was really, really, really good. He'll be here. He'll be the speaker next week. And I just challenge you to come and be ready to learn. Thank you so much for being part of the Empowering Pastors training on Tuesdays.